SatNaving Life is proudly sponsored by Pro Training Courses, a top health and safety provider offering everything from mental health first aid response to resilience and breathwork training, and other health and safety training courses like Safe Pass, fire safety and manual handling. They tailor programs for corporate businesses, schools, community centres, sports facilities, students, teachers and the Gardaí. No one is excluded. On-site or online, they bring expert training to you. Visit www.protrainingcourses.com or contact the office 047 88598. In part one of this two-part podcast, we met Kelly Lynch through the eyes of her mother, Julieanne. We heard about a little girl full of personality, a young woman deeply loved by her family, and a daughter whose future seemed to be opening up before her. We followed Kelly's journey through the challenges she faced in her relationships, her struggles with mental health, and the resilience she showed as she worked to rebuild her confidence and regain control of her life. By early 2024, Kelly was making plans for college, spending more time with family and looking ahead to a new chapter. Then everything changed. In March 2024, Kelly received devastating news. Her boyfriend's brother had been found dead after being reported missing. Wanting to support the family through their grief, Kelly left home that day. She hugged her mother and promised, as she always did, "See you soon." Neither of them knew it would be their final goodbye.
And I can hear her walking. She's kind of breathing heavy and she's crying and she's making these weird noises. And I can hear twigs or whatever, stones beneath her feet. And then I can hear a gasp. And then that's it. I remember when they said it was time for us to go, I just did not want to leave. I just wanted to go into that room and pick her up and cradle her in my arms like I used to when she was a baby. But I couldn't do that, and I felt so guilty having to leave her. I felt she didn't like being alone. And people have said to me, if you don't get justice in this world, you will get it in the next. But that's not good enough for me. I believe in people being held accountable on this earth.
My name is Carol McGirl. I'm a qualified nurse and health and safety trainer. I sit down with people who share difficult life experiences, giving us a glimpse into how they navigate personal challenges with courage and resilience. When we begin part 2 of the podcast, Kelly has been away from home. Julieanne and Kelly remain in contact, exchanging messages and phone calls as they always had. But then something happens that no parent is ever prepared for. The messages stop, the calls go unanswered, and a mother's instincts begin to tell her that something is terribly wrong. Julieanne, thank you so much for joining me again today to give us a clearer picture of what your experience was.
Thank you, Karen.
When Kelly left to be there for her boyfriend and go support him, how do you think she was coping?
Kelly wasn't very comfortable with crowds, and she wasn't very comfortable with the whole dynamics of being at a wake. So she did text me that she doesn't know what to do to support her boyfriend. And I said, just be there for him. We were in contact with her continuously over the 48-hour period before we last were speaking to her.
And Julieanne, could you give us an insight to the first night that she was in Monaghan at that time?
They had been in a bar in town and the group of people that she was with had disappeared. So she rang Sean, panicking. Where have they gone, Daddy? I didn't think they'd leave me. I'm afraid on my own. But Sean told her, just where were they planning on going next? Stay on the phone with me while you get in there. So she went into a pub and she seen them and she just says goodbye to Sean. She found them and that was okay. I tend to waken up very early and I just went into Kelly's room and got into her bed, as I do. I went on my phone and I'd seen that she had been ringing me, and then she texted me And I still had those texts, and she was really upset. So we had a chat on the phone, and this is between 5 and 6 a.m. And she just says, "Mommy, I just want to come home." And I said, "Are you sure?" She says, "Yeah." And I said to her, "Okay, then when Daddy drops Matthew to work, Matthew had to be in work for 8. One of us will come down and get you." So Sean dropped Matthew off to work, and I rang Sean, and he says, "Just give her another call just to make sure she does want to come home." I rang her and she says, "Oh, Mommy, I'm going to stay. I'm so tired."
Oh.
And I says, "Are you sure?" I says, "We don't mind. Daddy will go down and get you, or I'll come down and get you if Daddy has to work." And she says, "No, Mommy, I'm really tired. I think I'm just going to go to sleep." And I was so uneasy about that because she was so adamant an hour before. And I said, "Okay, that's your decision." I says, "But keep in contact with me." She says, "Yeah, Mommy, I'll give you a call later." And she did. We text later on that afternoon after she had a few hours sleep. Then later, I don't know which pub she was, and she rang me, and she was in the bathroom in the town, and I think she was washing her hands, and the bathroom door open, and then she put me on speakerphone, and I could hear her boyfriend talk to her, said, "I'm so sorry about the loss of your brother." I said, "This is unimaginable for the whole family." And then I kind of went into mommy mode. "You should be at home with your mother and father." And he got a wee bit pissy with me because of that. But at the end of the day, I'm a mommy, and I kind of changed the subject. Then I just said, "Will you look after her tonight?" And he says, "I will." And I says, "Promise me now you'll look after her." And he says, "I promise you, Julianne, I'll look after her. Nothing will happen to her." And I says, "Okay." And she says, "Mommy, we're going to go now." And I says, "Okay." I says, "Just look after yourself, pet." And I said, "I love you." And she said, "I love you too." Then at around 8 p.m, I'd sent her a text saying, "Do you still want to come home? Daddy said that he can drive over." And she says, "No, Mommy, I'm just going to stay." And I went, "All right." But I'd sent her another text, but to this day, that text has never been read. I went to bed that night with a false sense of security. There was nothing in me, no intuition or any bad feeling to make me think that she wasn't okay. At the end of the day, she was down supporting a grieving family. What harm was she going to come to? I knew that there would come a point that they'd get sick of the time and just go back home. I always put my watch on the sleep mode if I know that I'm not going to be getting any phone calls, if everybody's okay, everybody's in their locations. But about 3 o'clock that morning, my then 4-year-old woke up and he was screaming. He was frantic. He must have had a night terror, and it took him ages and ages to settle down. And normally Sean would check his phone, but we were just so exhausted that he just went on to sleep in Kelly's room. Then I got up the next morning and I'd seen all these missed phone calls from Kelly, and I went through the call list, and there were different times, 11 minutes past 1, and then a call after 2, and just different times. There was about 5 or 6 phone calls. And it wasn't until lunchtime that I actually seen a voicemail. And I seen it was a voicemail from Kelly. And I was like, this is really weird, because Kelly would never leave anyone a voicemail. She might send voice notes, but definitely not leave a message of any kind like that. So I listened, and it was like 23 seconds long. And I could not make sense of it. As I was listening, I replayed it, and I was thinking, did she leave this by accident? And I listened to it again, because she's not saying anything. And I can hear her walking. She's kind of breathing heavy, and she's crying, and she's making these weird noises. And I can hear twigs or whatever, stones beneath her feet. And then I can hear a gasp. And then that's it. And I listened to it a couple of times, and what is this? And then I text her, says, "Kelly, you left me the weirdest voicemail last night. What was going on?" Obviously, that's never been read. And I had been trying to reply to the calls, and Sean came down and he says, "I had loads of missed calls from Kelly." And I went, "Yeah, so did I." And tea time was coming round, and I was ringing. And normally now around 4 or 5 in the day, she would ring or she'd text, she'd go, "I'm alive." Because I'd always be sarcastic, "Are you alive?" And she'd say, "Yeah, I'm alive, I'm kicking." And I kept ringing and ringing. I wasn't getting anything, and I was just getting this weird feeling, completely out of character. Kelly would never, ever not reply. I rang my mummy and I thought mummy'd ring her and daddy'd ring her. I contacted my eldest son who lived in Enniskillen at the time. He was on night shift and he says, I had a couple of calls from Kelly last night, but I just thought she was drunk and was just ringing up for the crack. And then my son, who's autistic, said, Kelly rang me twice last night. And I said, did you take the call? He says, no. He says, why is she ringing me? She never rings me. Because Kelly would never have rang him. And she knew that he, even to this day, will not take a phone call. So I rang mommy back and she says, I can't get through to her. She says, she's probably just sleeping off the night before. And then if the young man's come home, she's probably busy. And I said, yeah, but she'd ring me. 8 o'clock came and I was ringing. Sean was ringing. I could just feel this knot in my tummy that there was something wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it because at the end of the day, I knew the young man had come home to the family. I knew that people would be coming from the community to pay their respects. What could possibly be wrong? And by 9 o'clock, it was just ringing and ringing. I didn't have a boyfriend's number. We weren't friends on social media, but I knew from Kelly's account, to go and look for him. So I searched him up and I sent him a Facebook message at 9:38 p.m. I just said, hi, his name, and I'm so sorry for contacting you. I know that your family are going through an awful lot, but is Kelly okay? I just want to know that she's okay. I haven't heard from her. And to this day, I've never got a reply. I kept checking my phone. There was just nothing. Everything was being delivered to Kelly, but nothing was being opened. And I was checking socials and there was just nothing. Just literally no communication whatsoever. Even Sean at this point said there's something wrong. And I said, yeah, it's something wrong. And he said, we'll call to the house in the morning just to see her, find out what's going on. I couldn't sleep.
So the plan was to head up the next morning?
Yes, there was just going to be Poppy and Finn coming with us. So the next morning, checking my phone, making phone calls, checking in with mommy again. And it was around 12:25 that my then 18-year-old got a phone call from a withheld number, and it was the PSNI. And they got through to him and asked to speak to the next of kin of Kelly Lynch. And he says, I'll put you on to mommy. I took the call. I confirmed who I was, my name, my address, my phone number. I knew from the moment he repeated the words next of kin, there's something really wrong. But then there's that tiny flicker of hope that it's okay. But I think I knew in my heart that something bad was coming to us. And I remember asking the female call handler, was everything okay with Kelly? She says, I just know that Mona and Gardaí are trying to get in contact with you and you need to keep the phone line clear. And I went, okay. And I told the boys, told Sean, was very ashen in the face. And obviously I had that sickly feeling. But I went into autopilot, got the children into the car. Let's go to Monaghan. And we had only got to the next town, which is 3 miles over from us. We were pulling in to get diesel and the call came, and it was just shortly after 1. And the Garda, he asked me, was he speaking to the next of kin of Kelly Lynch? And I said, yes, I'm Kelly's mother. And I says, is she okay? And then I remember thinking, please tell me she's in a cell, that she's been drunk and disorderly and we have to come and pick her up. And he says, I'm so sorry to have to do this over the phone. And I just knew. I just knew what was coming to me. And he says, I'm sorry to tell you, but your daughter Kelly Marie Lynch is deceased. And at that point, the call was on speakerphone.
Oh, God.
And Sean was driving. I remember him hitting the steering wheel and he goes, what? And I just says, what? And he says, your daughter Kelly Marie Lynch is deceased. And I just remember saying, my baby. And I literally do not remember us pulling out of the filling station or even the journey back to the house, which is 3 minutes back to our house, 3 mile journey. I do not remember that. So I literally felt like all air was being sucked out of me and everything became like a vortex around me. It was a bright day. It wasn't warm, but it was a bright day. Everything just dull. Poppy was screaming. She took her seatbelt off and was sitting up, holding on to both our seats and just screaming. And because she was screaming, Finn was screaming. And all the while I was begging the Garda, please tell me this is not true. And I could hear him. He was like, I'm so sorry. And I says, where is she? Where is she? And he says, Mom, in the hospital. And I says, I need to see her. Can I see her? I was begging him, can I see her? Can I see her? And he says, yes, you can see her. I says, I need to get there. I need to get to see my baby. And Sean said that I have no recollection of it, but he said, I let this wail out of me that he has never heard before. It had been common knowledge for hours that Kelly was dead, but we hadn't been notified, and we had to tell the boys. And there was a couple of calls made between myself and the guard, and then they gave me the SIO's number. I had to ring Christopher, had to let him know before he seen it on social media, had to let him know before he started receiving the text. Then I had to ring my parents, and Sean had to ring his family. And what do you say to your child's grandparents? I just said, Kelly's dead. What other way? There's no softening this blow. And I heard Mommy and Daddy just breaking down. I told them, you need to come up. We have to go to Monaghan. I need somebody to look after the children. We need to go. I need to be with Kelly. I wanted to be with Kelly to see her. I suppose for me, I needed to see, to believe that this was the reality. But remember, at this stage, we had no idea where Kelly had been found. We had no idea of how she was dead or why she was dead. And we were given this news, and there was nobody there from any official capacity. There was nothing. There was us. I just remember Sean and I just literally walking up and down the hall, in and out of rooms. So then we started talking to the SIO, and I says, my parents are coming here. We're coming up to Monaghan. And that's when he said, but you can't. I said, but I want to see Kelly. I need to see Kelly. He says, you can't. And I said, why not? She has to have an official post-mortem with the state pathologist. And I said, but I need to see my child before anybody cuts her. And he said, her body's a crime scene. She can't be contaminated. And in that moment, I just could not understand. 1 minute I'm being told she's dead. Then I'm being told I can see her. Then I'm being told her body's a crime scene and I can't go and be with my child, to hold her, to touch her, to kiss her, to see that this is actually real, this is actually happening, and that all control had literally been taken away from me in that moment. All control as being her mother, Sean's control of being her father. We were completely diminished of that role, and we still hadn't a clue at this point of what happened. She was at a wake. She was there to support family in need. Them going through one of the worst times in their life. Like, how is my daughter? How is our daughter dead? The calls became infrequent between us and the guard, and then we received a phone call from somebody who introduced themselves as our family liaison officer, Flo. And then this person explained the next steps for us, and they were saying that we can't see her because she's being transported to Navan. But at that time, it wasn't being said to us. It was a forensic postmortem. I did not understand, and I did not want nobody touching her. Oh my God, for me, it was like, this is violation. They're going to see my daughter. They're going to see her naked, exposed. And I know it's a medical setting. I know that they had to determine her cause of death and to rule out or include anything in their report. But just the thought of her being alone, so alone. She didn't like being alone, and she was just such a mummy's girl that she just loved company. You weren't allowed to see her. And it was later on that evening that we learned that she had been found under a bridge. I remember driving over the bridge a few times. When you're not familiar with an area, you don't really pass much remarks on the locations. For me, it was just a bridge. I didn't know that it was 40 foot down into the stretch of canal, which I now know is drained because of littering and sewage and whatnot. But I still couldn't envision in my head this bridge. The phone calls with the flow kind of explained to us that she'd be in contact the next morning with us with what's happening next.
Only phone calls.
Only phone calls. No official capacity by anyone at our door on either side of the border. No Gardaí, no PSNI, nobody coming into the house to offer us any support in a professional capacity, explaining to us what would be happening next. And then the fact that it had been rolling around in social media and we weren't notified of Kelly's death until 1:03. So what took it so long to come to us when it was widely known by so many already? That night, after announcing Kelly's death, after contacting the priest, after contacting the undertakers, thank God my parents were there and my sisters were there, because Sean and I were like headless monkeys. I was pacing from room to room and trying to make sense of this new world, this new reality. I was so afraid for the first time in my life, knowing that my daughter didn't share the same world as me. And I still remember that first night. But I knew in order for me to be able to deal with the death of my child, I had to see my child. And I was denied that. So the next morning, after one of the worst nights in my life, we got up and we went to Fermanagh. Sean wanted to drive down, and Chris, our eldest, wanted to come with us. Him and Kelly were so close. They were the first two for a long time. We were just waiting for the family liaison officer to make contact with us. She did contact us and said we needed to be in Navan for 3 to identify Kelly's body. So my brother-in-law and my sister had come up and they were just waiting with us. We went and chose Kelly's coffin. But Sean had been talking to Leo before that and said I wanted a white coffin. There was one in Enniskillen and they brought it up because I wanted Kelly to have a white coffin. I just remember just thinking when I was pregnant with her, I went in choosing a Moses basket and then a cot and then our first bed and things like that. And I never imagined I'd be choosing a coffin. And then as soon as we chose the coffin, we had to then make the journey to Navan. And the whole way to Navan was such a long journey. I was just so sick. I wasn't even crying. I was just remember closing my eyes and Krista was sitting beside me sobbing. We had been denied seeing Kelly the day before, which would have prepared us in some respect. We got to Navan. We were met by the family liaison officer. Then the mortuary assistant was explaining about what we would see and that and where we would go to view her. And that she had some marks on the side of her face and something up near her eye. Stephen stayed out by the car, which I remember looking back at him and like so grey in the face. And we were taken into this small room. There was a big window and on the other side was a purple blanket, purple fleece blanket. And the closest thing to us would have been Kelly's feet. And the furthest thing away from us was her hair and the top of her face, because the blanket had been pulled up to conceal some of the injuries, and obviously her mouth was still agape, and we had learned that they hadn't finished the autopsy. So below that purple blanket, Kelly was still cut open. Her organs had been removed from her body. They weren't done yet. And that might be triggering for some people, but that's the reality of how my daughter was presented to me. And I knew it was Kelly just from her eyebrows and the blonde streaks in her hair, but her hair was like a bird's nest. It was so matty and messy. She hadn't been washed yet. And I just remember screaming and crying. And yeah, that's my daughter, that's my Kelly, that's my child. And Sean sobbing, he was agreeing. I remember asking, how did she die? Why is she dead? And a mortuary assistant said a head injury conducive with a fall from height. Now that was the first time we had heard a fall from height. And a head injury, you're looking at your dead child, but you can't see all of her. I remember when they said it was time for us to go, I just did not want to leave. I just wanted to go into that room and pick her up and cradle her in my arms like I used to when she was a baby, and sing wee songs to her, hum the Four Seasons or stuff that was familiar from when she was a baby, but I couldn't do that, and I felt so guilty having to leave her. Like, poor Kelly would have hated her hair like that. I felt she didn't like being alone, and she was just such a mommy and daddy's girl, and she was equally a mommy and daddy's girl. She really was. And Sean and Christopher had to literally pull me from the room, and even when we were walking out the door, I kept looking back, and I said to the mortuary assistant, don't take that blanket off her, she loves purple. And he says, no, I'll leave it on her. And when we went outside, all I said to Steve is Kelly, and he cried, and we all cried, and the whole journey home Christopher and I just cried and cried. But by the time we got home, I was so cried out and angry. Oh my God, I was so angry. I blamed God for taking her away from me at 23 years of age. I was just so angry. But obviously at that point, we didn't know the full extent of Kelly's death, the full extent of her injuries, and we wouldn't know for 5 months. So on the Wednesday, we met with our undertakers in Navan. Leo went in and Connor went in, brothers, and obviously they helped you get her dressed and laid out and all that. And then Leo did come out and he got into the car beside me and he says, you can't move her head. Obviously her brain had been taken out and hadn't been put back in. Her head had been stapled in places and she had 2 severe head injuries as well. And he says, you can see these marks on her face. And I just couldn't understand what these marks were, because to me, I was thinking, is it cuts? What is this stuff? He said, but we've laid her out in such a way and her hair is lovely, like she looks beautiful and that. So I said, okay. I remember standing back and just staring at her, and I just, you're not my child. You're a beautiful version of her, but you're not Kelly. And then I looked at her face and it was like all these clusters of indentations, and I couldn't understand what that was. And her jaw looked all unaligned, which I had obviously stated at one point that I thought it was broken or a broken jaw, but it wasn't broken. Obviously she had injuries. It just felt so surreal. And I took photographs of her and I examined her. I looked at her ear where the earrings were, and that's when I seen the bruising that I had seen 2 years previously. And I was like, why would she be bruised there? And then I said to my sister, those are knuckle marks. And then I got the pictures of her taken after the assault in 2022. And she says, those are identical. She says, just photograph whatever you can. So I photographed her entire face, her hands, what I could without having to disturb her skin. And it was when I was putting one of my rings on her, I noticed all the wee grazes and bruising and fingertip marks on her skin. Even though they had embalmed her, she was lying in the water for 30 hours. And when I say water, a puddle, but she was in the elements for 30 hours. Kelly was missing for over 30 hours and nobody had actually reported her missing. Nobody had made contact with us. But nobody was worried about her, or the people already know where she was and was hoping that somebody else would find her. She was found between 8:30, 9 o'clock on the 17th of March by her boyfriend and his cousin. And the last person to see her alive was her boyfriend. Why did they go to the bridge? Why did they waken up on the Sunday morning? He says he saw her bag and he just got a sixth sense. So if he got a sixth sense, why didn't he go knocking on neighbours' houses? Why walk from Mullamat to the bridge? I've been to that bridge several times, and when you walk to that bridge, you literally have to pull yourself up onto the parapet to look over. You just can't walk along and see what's below it. So how did they know to go there? How did they know to look over the parapet and then see my daughter? That's all I want to know.
You said it was like 5 months before you started to get a clearer picture.
Yeah, obviously after the turmoil of the funeral and everything and going to the scene with the guards 8 days after, they handed us back Kelly's clothing. They didn't retain anything for evidence. The guards lied to us, saying that they done all relevant DNA and took samples. We do know that is a lie from the SIO. I can't say how we know, but we do have a peer review and we do have evidence. We questioned all of this. We weren't getting answers. The communication between ourselves and Monaghan Garda Station was becoming sporadic. It wasn't consistent and it wasn't done in a timely manner, considering that my daughter died in their jurisdiction. The duty of care towards us seemed to be completely thrown out the window, and all bias about who Kelly was, where she was from, how she was dressed, possibly how she looked, because Kelly is quite alternative looking. So I do believe there was a bias opinion made on Kelly just from those things. And I just don't believe they had a duty of care for Kelly whatsoever. And it was just so much easier to go with the narrative that was suicide. But suicide was ruled out. And then the accidental.
Can I ask you, is it true that was on St. Patrick's Day and that the parade walked over the bridge?
No, there's not the parade walked over the bridge. They were using the bridge as a way of managing the diversion from the town so the parade could go through the town. Yes, there's been a lot of misinformation in regards to that. No, the guards were on the bridge that day on St. Patrick's Day, but I think it was just for the diversion of traffic coming from the town. My sister, who lives about 20 minutes from Monaghan, on her way up to my house on the Sunday, she seen it was open and she questioned, why is there nobody here? And she walked over, she looked, there was no police tape. There was no forensics going on. There was no activity whatsoever. And the guard said, I'm just here, traffic diversion. They went back to the scene and there was suddenly police tape up and 2 Garda present. Why did it take my sister? Question it for that to happen. Why after the fact? We really started documenting everything that was being told to us. We documented, went to the guards with information. We brought the clothes home. We didn't look at them until the 5th of April. We took the clothes out. Nothing was bagged individually. Nothing was sealed. They were still sopping wet. We got the sheet and to lay them out. We photographed everything and we bagged them all up individually and put them back in a box. They were handed to us in an office filing box, just thrown in on top of each other with a bin bag over the top. Absolutely broke every protocol and procedure that was meant to have been followed. And that's just the basics. We fired so many legitimate questions to them, like valid questions to them. And then we weren't getting answers for weeks. So we lodged the complaint with Visru. And obviously it's been ongoing. And I began my campaign because there was literally no appeal for anybody with information regarding Kelly's death to come forward. There was nothing. There was absolute silence. There was no media attention. I was thinking to myself, why is nobody talking about this? So I started at the end of April, early May, to start documenting Kelly's case, to raise Kelly's profile and to put it out there that I had so many questions. So by putting it out there in the public domain, I was letting everybody know that we were being treated just like bereaved parents who were a nuisance. Yes, we were bereft at the loss of Kelly, but we were also intelligent and logic-minded to ask the questions that anybody else would ask, because things just did not add up. Our relationship with SIO and Monaghan had broken down quite seriously, because obviously if anybody has been following me, they'll know that I campaigned against them. And although in recent months there has been bridges built between us, because we are working with them again through the Katie Trust, but we're not working with the same SIO as before. But I decided to contact this Office of State Pathologist in June, because when I contacted the coroner's office, they still hadn't had Kelly's reports back or a toxicology report back, even though I had a meeting in April. I asked about the tox screen. No, that's not been even issued yet. So I spoke to the Office of State Pathologist, and then I ended that phone call. That was the 25th of June, and suddenly the 26th of June, everything was released to the coroner. And then I got on to my solicitor at the time, and we obtained a copy of Kelly's postmortem on the 21st of August. And it was when I read that report that I realised that my daughter most certainly did not die from an accidental fall. She had 93 injuries from the top of her head right down to the little toe on her left foot. She had no lower lumbar injuries whatsoever. She didn't have a fractured skull, which tends to happen. She didn't have the panda eyes, which is when the two eyes are completely black from impact with head injuries. Like the fact that her sternum was fractured, but she didn't sustain any fractured ribs. Not one rib was broken. It just makes the whole scenario of accidental death just seem so far-fetched. We went to the commissioner. The commissioner met with us in October 2024. He ordered a peer review. We're now in May 2026 and the peer review is still ongoing. But it's through the Katie Trust, which came about after the death of show jumper Katie Simpson and ex-detective Brannigan, who was a homicide detective at the PSNI. He was the one who cracked Katie's death. It had first been initially ruled as suicide, but it was through his work and his formidable tenacity to know that something was wrong that he got it turned around to homicides. I emailed him everything, and within 24 hours he was sat in our home and went through everything, and he had a lot of questions. In his mind, working with homicides like for over 20 years, and he's dealt with a lot of hidden homicides, and he just can't understand the level of injuries that aren't consistent with a fall from height. And he's a lot of questions about how the injuries came about. We've not personally worked with Dr. Fintan Garvin. It was through the Katie Trust because he has to remain impartial. So he waived his fees, so he wasn't paid for an opinion. So his opinion is based on his long career and working with homicides. When he went through the postmortem and I got a copy of his report, everything he said just made sense to me, that Kelly's death was murder.
And did he say that?
He did. He says manner of death, homicide, and he listed why. And to this day, the state pathologist is still sticking with their original causation of death being drowning, even though Kelly didn't have any of the diagnoses of drowning in her body. And we were provided with a 35-page supplementary report which contradicts everything that the state pathologist had wrote in the original report. So those are simple, basic questions about how did she come about these injuries. And I will fight, and I will fight. I will take it to the highest court that I can to have these answers. We are literally in limbo, which frustrates us and it angers us. And also, it kind of puts the grieving process on hold, because there's days when I don't want to get out of bed. And I'm so sad. You feel your heart sink again, because this is what my daughter's life has come down to, because she's no longer here. There's no presence of her existence in this earth anymore. She's a case number.
I can't even imagine, Julieanne. It's all so much to comprehend. How are you keeping your head above water, let alone your family?
2 weeks after Kelly died, I had the children with the GP, and I had them all referred to CAMS because I knew that they would need the support. Poppy will actually not talk about Kelly. I'm so afraid of her being out of my sight because I just see the world as just full of danger and bad people, and I don't trust anyone. I worry about my eldest. He's 29. If I don't hear from him, I'm thinking the worst. And then my 20-year-old, he's under the mental health services now as well because he's depressed. He's suffering with trauma. It has a domino effect on the family. It's not just Sean and I as our parents, it's our children, it's her friends, it's our grandparents, and even Finn. I just want the children to have strategies in place that they are able to live with what's happened to Kelly and live with the grief, but not allow it to hold them back, because they still have a life to live. They still have a future ahead of them, just like Sean and I do. But I don't want the children to have this intergenerational trauma that they're going to take into adulthood and then pass down to their own children. I don't want that to be the takeaway from this. I want the children to be robust and understand their feelings. Allow yourself to feel the emotion, go through with it. And then once you come out the other side of it, let go of that emotion. That's how I think I have survived the past 2 years without Kelly, is because I've not denied myself any of those moments. I've not denied myself being sad or being numb or being angry or being fearful, or even the moments when I laugh. I don't allow myself to feel guilty for that, because all those emotions are all flitting. And the problem is with people, everybody holds on to that flitting moment and they allow things to take over their life rather than acknowledging it at the time and then letting it go. I had to radically, very quickly accept that Kelly was dead and wasn't coming back. I didn't want to live with the denial of that, because I knew that I've seen it, that people do live with denial, and I didn't want to be that person.
You know how bargaining is one of the stages in grief. How have you coped with bargaining, like the what ifs and the if onlys?
Yes, what if we had taken the phone calls that night? What if we had got the Kelly in time? We don't know the what ifs, because Kelly could have already been too far gone to ever be saved. We can't undo what's been done, and you just have to accept that. But living with grief it's a life sentence. I believe that I've been handed the worst life sentence of all. Then I look at my children, and my children are my anchor. Sean's my anchor. We are getting up every day and we are still here fighting the good fight.
Do you believe you'll get the answers?
I don't know. I can't say I believe. I just live with hope that we do. And I won't even say that I pray. I just believe that if I make enough noise and get the public behind me, which I've been doing, it's taken 2 years to get to this point, but I am getting a lot of support now. And there's not been a week since Kelly's died that I've missed documenting that on Facebook. And it will continue until there is accountability and justice of some kind. And people have said to me, if you don't get justice in this world, you will get it in the next. But that's not good enough for me. I believe in people being held accountable on this earth. I don't even think my children realised how stubborn I am. I don't fear anything. I don't fear going up against people. Mommy and Daddy go to Kelly's grave quite regularly, but for me, it's just a reminder of what's beneath the concrete and the dirt, that child that I grew inside my body, because I remember I felt her life in me. I carried her for 42 weeks. She did not want to leave. She was, as I say, an extension of my soul. She was just like a mini me, a better version of me. She was just so beautiful, kind-hearted, gentle, a wee bit nutty. She loved the crack. She loved the night out. She loved noodles, curried noodles and Bondi Sands tan. And now I can't stand the smell of either of them because it just reminds me of her. She loved perfume.
Do you believe that you and Kelly will be together again, Julieanne?
I believe I will be reunited with her. I don't know what exists beyond here, but I believe our soul is energy and energy lives on. I don't know if there's a heaven, but there has to be something beyond here. I do believe that Kelly has possibly been giving me the fight as well.
Is there any advice that you'd give to me as a mom, to mother parents out there?
If they bring somebody home, whether it's a female partner or a male partner, you get to know them. And if you do have a niggly feeling, don't be afraid to question it. But also don't suffocate your children. You have to allow them to learn to become self-sufficient, self-reliant, and how to heal themselves. I just believe that you need to hold their hand when they need their hands held. Hug them even when they don't think they need a hug, and always end the day with a kiss and I love you. Just hold on to your babies. Hug them a little bit tighter. Have a little joke with them. Enjoy the funny things. Document everything. They are the most precious things you'll ever have.
Thank you, Julieanne.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so much. As we come to the end of today's conversation with Julieanne, we're reminded of the remarkable ways human beings adapt to unimaginable trauma. By sharing her story so openly, Julieanne has given us a powerful insight into grief, resilience, and the ways that our nervous system responds when life changes in an instant. This brings me to reflect on the polyvagal theory developed by Dr. Stephen Purges. This theory helps us to understand how our nervous system responds to safety, danger, and overwhelm. Most of us spend our lives moving between different nervous system states. There is the road of safety, connection, and calm, where we feel grounded and secure. Then there is the road of fight, flight, where fear, anxiety, vulnerability, and survival take over. And finally, there's the road of shutdown and disconnection, where we might feel numb, withdrawn, lonely, or lost. Listening to Julieanne today, we can see how she and her family were forced onto these difficult roads following the loss of Kelly. We can hear the fear, confusion, unanswered questions, overwhelming sadness, and the ongoing search for answers. But we can also hear the strength, determination, love, and hope that continue to carry her forward. We often hear about the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. While grief is never linear, Julieanne speaks today openly and honestly about how she has navigated the reality of Kelly's loss head on. She spoke of anger fueled by unanswered questions and lack of support. She shared the painful what-ifs that so many people experience and the deep sadness that comes with losing somebody you love. But perhaps the most important message from today's conversation is that grief deserves to be felt. The anger, the sadness, the fear, the confusion, and even the hope are all part of being human. We don't heal by avoiding those feelings. We heal by allowing ourselves to move through them while seeking support and connection along the way. Another lesson from Julieanne's story is the importance of trusting your instinct. If something doesn't feel right, ask the question. If concerns arise about somebody you love, don't ignore them. Trust that inner voice and seek support when you need it. For Julieanne and her family, the search for answers continue. Her hope remains that one day there will be clarity, accountability, and the truth that she believes Kelly deserves. Beyond the investigations, the reports, and all of the unanswered questions, Kelly remains the heart of this story, a deeply loved daughter, sister, granddaughter, and a friend whose memory continues to live on in the lives of those who knew and loved her. We'll leave you today with the words Julieanne shared with us. Hold your children, hug them a little tighter, tell them that you love them, and never take the ordinary moments for granted. Thank you for joining us on SatNaving Life. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and wherever you are on life's journey, may you find your way back to connection, safety, and hope.